in building your strategy, it's important to understand barriers to entry. It's important to understand it from a perspective of us entering a new market, and it's also important for us to understand it from the perspective of competitors potentially entering the market that we are already in. This is the idea of threat of new entrants. Barriers to entry are, let's say, things that make it more difficult for competitors to enter the market, or make it more difficult for us, in fact, to enter a market. And there are many different types of barriers. Some of these barriers we can have an influence on, and some barriers we can't. Economies of scale. Okay? If we're in a particular industry where there's significant economies of scale, that means volume. The more we produce, the lower our cost. If we're just entering it, our volume is very low, so we're going to have a cost disadvantage. So businesses that have significant economies of scale are protected somewhat from lots of entrants because there's a significant investment that needs to be required in order to push those costs down. Product differentiation. If products are different, if your product has to be different to have any success in the marketplace, that creates some sort of barrier. Okay? That's one that we can generally overcome. Capital requirements. Does this business require significant hundreds of millions or billions of dollars or euros to get in? Okay, that's going to prevent a lot of people from getting in. Which, if we're in, that's good. If we're out, it might not be so good. Switching costs. Okay. Is there a high cost to move from competitor's A product from competitor A's product or to competitor B's product? If we're switching from toothpaste, there's virtually no switching costs. I can buy Crest today and Pepsodent tomorrow. But if I'm using a Mac computer, okay, I can't switch tomorrow to a Windows computer because I don't know how to use a Windows computer. I don't have the software for a Windows computer, so there are switching costs involved. Or if I have a contract with Canon, I just can't switch to a Brother or Epson printer or copier without incurring a significant cost. Access to distribution channels, government policy, all of these things are barriers to entry. Okay. Let's see here. These just go into a little bit more detail on things that I've just said. This access to distribution one, though, is one that you need to pay attention to, because oftentimes, to get into the food business, for example, oftentimes doesn't require that much money to create a new type of food. The challenge there is getting it on the food shelf in the store. How do you get your food onto the shelf? It is a very difficult, expensive, complex process. Okay. Anybody can make the food, but if you can't get it onto the shelf, you're not going to be successful. So access to distribution is important. Okay. To sell, for example, books and music, it used to be a challenge because there were only certain bookstores or music shops where you could sell your music or books. But now, actually, with the internet, anybody can sell music or books. It's opened up the channels of distribution. So the profits that went to the record companies and book publishers because they controlled access to distribution have now gone away, and now that's in large part while they're struggling to find a new business model that can sustain them. So when you're developing your strategy, understanding these barriers can reduce the level of competition, which then increases your profitability. On the other hand, if your strategy involves entering a market that you're not already in, you need to understand the barriers and how can you overcome these barriers. Are you willing to pay the price to over or jump the barrier to get in. You need to know all these things as you're developing your strategy. Temporary monopoly. Monopolies, outside of rare circumstances, the ones that are granted by government, are illegal in most countries. Okay? Simply said. By the same token, we want to have as much market share as possible. We want to sell as much of our product or service as possible. What I would like you to do when you're thinking about developing your strategy is to try to create a strategy where you have a, let's say, temporary monopoly, whereby for a period of time, if anybody wants to buy a product or service like yours, the only place to get it is from you. For example, Coke. There are lots of different sellers of cola, from Pepsi to, you name it. But there's only one Coke. And as they said in some of their campaigns, Coke is it. Okay? If you want Coke, there's only one place to get it. If you want an iPhone, there's only one place to get it. It's the products and services that in large part have become the brand. The brand has become the name of the product category. Google. In many cases, they've become the verb. We want to Xerox something. We want to Google something. Or they're the noun. Can I have a Kleenex? Okay. All of these are brand names that have become synonymous with the product and service. So how can we create a product and service where we have it to ourselves? And the way to do it is to have a differentiated product that's very sensitive to the needs and wants and the pain of the customer. And you provide the benefits for that particular customer so well that if they want a product or service that meets their needs, the only place they can go is to you. Very simple. It's very simple. Okay? It's simple to say. It's harder to do. But you can do it. So think about, how can I create a temporary monopoly that if a customer wants this set of features, this set of benefits, that the only place that they can get them is from us. So think about that. So what we learned today is a little bit about new venture strategy. Okay, a little bit about how we can, or at least how the process goes in developing what our strategy is. Some of the things that we need to look at. Internally in the firm, strengths and weaknesses. External, opportunities, threats, and trends. We need to look at the customers. We need to understand those things and how that fits within our plans and objectives and ultimately the mission of why our firm exists. So I hope that you have a little bit better understanding of what strategy is. It will come up again when we talk about business models, because again, as I said, business models and strategies are intimately linked together. Okay, but strategy is ultimately important.